Bismillah. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa alihi wa sallim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Warm greetings and a heartfelt welcome to the UK Islamic Mission Sisters Ramadan 2024 series. It's a pleasure to have you all here in this enlightening online platform dedicated to our theme, Together for Change. We also have local centres across UK running programs for sisters, youth and children. This is our final week and we are on our second last day, Alhamdulillah. I'm Rim Chakraborty and I have embraced Islam several years ago. And I'm absolutely delighted to be your host for today's session. I'm a National Secretary for the Sisters New Muslim Care Department at UK Islamic Mission. Let's embark on this journey together, exploring the essence of cooperation in righteousness and God consciousness. Before we start our session, let's quickly go over a few housekeeping guidelines. Kindly ensure that your mics are muted and your cameras are switched off. If you have any questions or thoughts bubbling up during the presentation, don't hesitate to type them into the chat box. We'll make sure to tackle them during our interactive Q&A session later on. Now, we'll commence with a Quran recitation by Sister Uzma Gul. She will be reciting Surah Hajj Ruku 10, for which the English translation is already displayed on the slide.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا أيها الناس ضرب مثل فاستمعوا له إن الذين تدعون من دون الله لن يخلقوا ذبابا ولو اجتمعوا له وإن يسلبهم الذباب شيئا لا يستنقذوه منه ضعف الطالب والمطلوب ما قدر الله حق قدره إن الله لقوي عزيز الله يصطفي من الملائكة رسلا ومن الناس إن الله سميع بصير يعلم ما بين أيديهم وما خلفهم وإلى الله ترجع الأمور يا أيها الذين آمنوا اركعوا واسجدوا واعبدوا ربكم وافعلوا الخير لعلكم تفلحون وجاهدوا في الله حق جهاده هو اجتباكم وما جعل عليكم في الدين من حرج ملة أبيكم إبراهيم هو سماكم المسلمين من قبل وفي هذا ليكون الرسول شهيدا عليكم وتكونوا شهداء على الناس فأقيموا الصلاة وآتوا الزكاة واعتصموا بالله هو مولاكم فنعم المولى ونعم النصير. صدق الله العظيم.
Jazakallah khair, Sister Uzma. Mashallah, tabarakallah, for that beautiful recitation. Inshallah, let us begin. رب اشرح رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. Prior to commencing today's program, I'd like to present an overview of the central theme for this year's UK Islamic Mission Ramadan. Our emphasis lies on وَكُنْتُمْ أَمْوَاتًا فَأَحْيَاكُمْ, and you were lifeless, and he gave you life. This verse from the Quran captures a profound concept within Islamic spirituality. The verse invites reflection on the marvel of creation, the continuity of existence, and the gratitude owed to the Creator for bestowing life upon humanity. It urges believers to recognize Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's authority and benevolence, as well as their own dependence on Him for sustenance and guidance. Our sessions aim to explore insights from esteemed speaker on unlocking the path of change. Please allow me to introduce you to today's speaker, Brother Mustafa Khan. Brother Mustafa works as an executive compensation consultant at Alvarez and Marceau. He supports executives and non-executives at FTSE listed companies and he helps them to work out their board level remuneration strategy, incentive design, benchmarking, and disclosure. Previously, he was an auditor at KPMG London, where he qualified as a chartered accountant. He holds a BSc in economics and history at the London School of Economics and also a graduate diploma in accounting from BPP University. Brother Mustafa completed his hifz of Quran in Leicester and continues his studies of Islamic knowledge. Alhamdulillah. I would like to invite Brother Mustafa Khan to deliver his session on community spirit, where he will be talking about social solutions. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept it from him. Indeed, Brother Mustafa Khan is a highly accomplished brother. MashaAllah, tabarakallah. Brother Mustafa, the floor is all yours.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Jazakallah khair for that introduction. So firstly, I want to check if everyone can hear me. So if someone can just message on the chat if they can hear me. Whilst you do that, I'm just going to present my screen. Okay, great. Alhamdulillah. So you can hear me. That's a good start. Okay, now I'm just going to try and present my screen. Okay, so I can see that it started sharing. So if someone can let me know if they can see my slide. Okay, great. Alhamdulillah. Okay, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Nahmaduhu wa nasalli ala rasulih al-Kareem. First of all, I just want to say Jazakallah khair for the sisters organizing this. May Allah accept it from all of them. MashaAllah, it's been a very consistent thing to do it, throughout Ramadan. Alhamdulillah. And so the topic I've been giving today is social solutions, why Sharia is good for our society. And the first thing I want to say is that I'm going to try and make this quite interactive and, try and get some questions and answers going in the chat. Okay, someone's just messaged that they can't see the screen. Is that just Sister Shaheen or is that for everyone? I can just double check that.
We can still see it. I think, Sister Shaheen, please, if you could log out and log in again, inshallah.
Okay, that's fine, inshallah. Um, so yeah, as I was saying, it's this inshallah, it's not going to be a very technical lecture today. I'm not going to go into the depths of inheritance law and bore you all to death talking about something that is not won't necessarily be relevant. Inshallah, today is going to be very practical, very relevant to all of us, and really what we want to get to the heart of today is why Sharia is good for our society and why the Islamic way of life is good for us both personally, but on a societal level as well, and not necessarily a restrictive way of living, which is sometimes how some Muslims and also non-Muslims can perceive it. And there's obviously Sharia is a very deep topic, and there are various angles that we can take to this topic. But the angle that I wanted to take today is in the light of da'wah. So there's a very specific da'wah angle that comes with Sharia, both to non-Muslims and also Muslims, especially in the recent events of Palestine. We know everything that's been going on there, and the real constant focus on Islam and Sharia that comes out of that. And we'll have often read many misleading, news articles talking about this issue. So with that in mind, let me move on to the next slide, which gives a very sort of quick overview of what I want to cover. Firstly, what is Sharia law? And secondly, what is the purpose of it? And then thirdly, which is what I want to spend most of the time on, is what are some of the benefits and real life practical applications for Sharia and how it actually makes life better for all of us, both personally and also on a societal level. So let's kick things off with a bit of a simple question. What comes to your mind when you think of Sharia law? So this is there's no right or wrong answer to this question. But if you can put in the chat box, for you personally, what comes to mind when you think of this topic? And it can be pretty much anything, but I'm just interested to see what people have to say. Okay, so interesting, rules and regulation. Okay, fair enough. Anyone else? Okay, good. That's a good answer. Living by Allah's laws, strict. Okay, good. I'm loving the capital punishment. Good. Yes. Yeah, that is a popular one and something that actually I'm going to focus on today because of the popularity of it. Entire cohesive system. Very good answer. Eye for an eye. Not living according to your desires. Women will be under strict rules. Good. Interesting. Interesting. Very interesting. You guys actually some of the answers have skipped on to the next question, which is brilliant. Marriage and divorce, Sharia, the divine rule. Okay, all great answers, and it's good that you guys have switched on because that's kind of the answers that I wanted to hear. Multiple marriages, okay. Controversial humanitarian protection. Okay, I think we've got a decent set of responses there. The next question, before I move on, same question but slightly different. What comes to a non-Muslim's mind when they think of Sharia law? And obviously this is where you have to sort of put yourself in someone else's shoes. Good, yeah. Strict, unfair, harsh, yeah. Hands cut off, yeah. All of the stereotypes and all of the stuff that we hear in the news. Exactly, correct. They think it's backwards, is what Sister Farhana says. Yeah, Sister Saba says strict. Sister Sonia says oppression. Yeah, all correct. So basically, the reason why I asked these two questions right at the start is this is kind of the heart of what I want to get to for today, which is there is a big disconnect between how non-Muslims perceive Sharia and how we perceive it. And sometimes there's a disconnect between how we perceive it and how we're supposed to understand it. Because, due to the way that we've been brought up with our faith, how we've been taught it from our parents, or how we've perceived it in our society, or how we've experienced it in our local mosques, which isn't necessarily Sharia, but more maybe a cultural thing that we've experienced. And so yeah, so some good responses still coming. Out of date rules, injustices, and the challenge for us is to bridge that gap between what Sharia actually is and what we and also non-Muslims perceive it to be. Not just for ourselves, but also to educate, more importantly, our children to be more confident in their faith when they grow up in the society. Because this is the topic, Islam and Sharia is a topic that gets very to the very core of it, which is what separates us as Muslims and our belief system for the rest of society. And I've had the privilege of running a weekly lad circle. Bit of an anecdote here, but for the past few years, which I started off in COVID, and these lads were teenagers, roughly from the ages of 12 to 18, 19, just before university, and it was an interesting experience for me, you know, kind of having discussions with them about what their view of Islam is and how they incorporate it in their lives, and what their perception of it is. And my sadly, what I realized was that the majority of them, the understanding was of Islam and Sharia was that it's just a bunch of rituals, restrictive, it doesn't let you do what you want to do. You just have to pray, fast, and then that's it. It's just a bunch of rules and there's nothing more to it. And I kind of realized from that experience that, and obviously I had discussions with these lads later and sort of changed their perspectives. What I realized is that we need to have a much more honest sort of discussion with ourselves and our children as to why we actually do all of these things in the first place, why we are Muslim, why do we follow these rules, alongside teaching our children how to pray and read the Quran. We should also educate them as to what is the Quran, why do we need to read it, why do we need to pray, do you believe in God, why do you believe in God, why do you think God exists? Because all these questions are really at the very heart of what it means to be a Muslim. And when Islam came 1,400 years ago, several years at the start of the Prophet's life was pretty much just spent changing people from the inside, as opposed to imposing a bunch of laws and restrictions, which is how unfortunately a lot of Muslims see Islam today, and including a lot of our kids. So the crux of the kind of the heart of what I want to get through today is, which I've sort of alluded to before, is that what Sharia actually is. What is its goals? Is it all about imposing laws and restrictions on us, or is it really about facilitating a society where we can live happily, both as a family unit but also as a social unit, and and is it something that is supposed to change what's inside of us, as opposed to practicing on the outside, like praying and fasting and growing a beard or wearing a hijab and a niqab? And hopefully, what I want to shed light on by the end of this sort of discussion is that Sharia is very much focused on the inside as opposed to just the outside. It's very much focused on changing ourselves from within. And the last one or two points I'll make is that the first hadith in the majority of the hadith books is the famous one, إنما الأعمال بالنيات. And the reason why all of these scholars chose to include it at the beginning is because of the importance of what's within us, right? Of our intentions before doing an action. If our intentions are all wrong, if we're just praying and fasting and following the Sharia because it's just a bunch of rules that we need to follow, then actually we haven't actually fulfilled what was expected from us. In fact, you could argue that Islam is much more about what's on the inside than on the outside. There is much more value in someone having a proper belief than doing actions without belief. So what does this mean? Like, how does this practically manifest itself? Before I sort of move on very quickly, how does this link to to us day to day? Well, the focus for us as parents, or as mothers, fathers, or as teachers, whatever our role is that we seem to obsessively focus on getting our kids educated on a secular level, praying 5 times a day, learning the Quran, but we don't focus, or we forget to focus on the fact, focus on the fact that, are they becoming good people? Are they unselfish? Do they care for others? Is my son or daughter or other people in my family, my spouse, my relatives, are they good people? Because of course it doesn't just extend to our children, it extends to everyone around us. What good is it if our children become selfish doctors, for example, right? Or if our relatives are specialized in something, but they're not actually good people. If you ask, for example, someone to say why they became a doctor, and they say, "Oh, it was to please my parents and get a good reputation," and then also, yeah, it was to help someone as well. I wanted to sort of get reward for that. The intentions are all wrong, right? The intentions, first and foremost, was because I wanted to please my parents and have a good reputation, And then the secondary thing was, okay, it's because I want to, actually help people and help society. So, not wanting to drone on for too long, but the point I'm trying to get across is that Sharia and Islam are very much to do with the inside as opposed to restrictive legislations on the outside. So yeah, Sister Shoma has messaged. Is it possible for you to share your boys' circle details? I think it really. Yeah, absolutely. Inshallah, I can definitely share. I can definitely share the link for that later on. So moving on. Story time. So this is something that this is a story that happened to me when I was 19, so a good few years ago now. And I was in my first year of university, and I was attending an interview for one of the big firms that I was applying to, an asset management firm, and then invited me for, like, I think it was a second round interview. And before the interview, they sort of sat me down in the waiting area, and a very senior person in the organization walked past, and he sort of recognized that I was there for an interview, and he sat down, and he obviously realized that I was a Muslim, because after some small talk, he began to question me about, my views on Sharia law, which is of course the topic today. And he was challenging me, and he was saying that your religion is violent, etc., etc., the standard sort of stuff that you hear. And of course, I was able to give him a relatively decent response. But in that moment, as a 19-year-old, I realized that I wasn't particularly confident in this myself. So if I wasn't confident in it myself, if I wasn't confident in the belief system in Sharia law, then how could I potentially convince someone else? How could I possibly convince someone else of this? And you could argue that a lot of the time we are in this posture that I found myself in, that we find ourselves in a very defensive posture, as opposed to someone who is actually arguing for something. We find ourselves defending what our faith says, and that's kind of hopefully what I'm looking to change. By the end of this discussion, to give us some of the benefits of Sharia law and how we can sort of interact with non-Muslims because of it. And I'm sure in the chat, if I ask, how many of you have had these sorts of interactions with not only Muslims, not only non-Muslims, but also Muslims, I'm sure everyone would share their experiences. But yeah, so I thought I'd just share this as a sort of reflection to set the scene. Before I move on, let me just go on to the next slide. So first things first, before I kind of dive into the actual meat of the discussion, is I wanted to touch upon this topic because this is a very popular topic, right? And the lens that I'm approaching this discussion on Sharia is to do with da'wah, right? And da'wah with non-Muslims, and also our Muslims, capital punishment is a topic that often comes up. Now, I'm going to get some interaction from you guys on this. The Quran says about this, وَلَكُمْ فِي الْقِصَاصِ حَيَاةٌ يَا أُولِي الْأَلْبَابِ, that in punishment, in retributive punishment, in capital punishment, there is life. Now, when I read this, I couldn't fathom as to how possibly can there be like an increase in life when you give capital punishment to someone. And there is a deeper answer to this. But before I kind of give the answers, as to what the benefits of capital punishment can be for a society, and there are huge benefits. I want to kind of get thoughts from you guys as to what do you think could be the benefit of, for example, if someone was a murderer, he's like a mass murderer, and he knows that there will be a capital punishment if he goes through with this action. What do you guys think are some of the benefits of having this punishment there in a society, as opposed to just sending someone to prison for 20, 30 years? I'd be interested to hear if you guys have any thoughts on this. It's a bit of a curveball question, but yeah. Let's hear your thoughts. Good, amazing. Preventative. So Sister Sunny has said preventative. Cleaner society, less crime. Sister Shoma says huge deterrent. Justice gives secure society, gives a consequence to the safety of society. Amazing. Great. So we've got so clearly everyone switched on, and we've got a good set of responses. So the first and most important thing with qisas is that there is a huge deterrent element. The purpose of Sharia and Islamic law isn't to punish people, or to impose restrictions on them. It's actually to prevent something from happening. It's a preventative thing. So if there is a murderer, or if there is a potential murderer, if there is a potential drug dealer, they know that if they carry out their crime, there will be severe consequences, potentially a capital punishment. There will be much stronger deterrent to them for carrying out that crime. And we can look at this practically. If we take if there's for example, if you take a known drug dealer, right, and this person has distributed drugs to thousands of people in a certain area and is responsible for the deaths of many. He himself has taken part in many killings, and this person is very publicly and very publicly executed, and everyone knows that he's been executed for this reason and this reason alone, that the police knew that he was a drug dealer, and he's actually been punished for it. Guaranteed overnight, the amount of crime will drop, just as a fact. And we can look at this very practically around the world. So even in limited applications of Sharia, for example, a country like Saudi Arabia, which isn't a perfect example of Sharia law, but still implements capital punishment, it's a much safer country for women, for everyone, because there are severe punishments for if you do a crime. And it's a sort of black and white thing that we can see in front of us. And I think that the point that I really wanted to hit home here is, when we speak to a non-Muslim, or when we speak to someone with a liberal mind, the initial knee-jerk reaction when hearing about capital punishment is that, oh, it's barbaric, and how possibly could this be right? But then when you actually mention these things, actually realize that their mind starts opening. And you say that, look, if someone came to you and murdered a family member of yours, or was distributing drugs to your family members, you would at least want to have the choice of having that retribution. And this is also a very important caveat I want to point out, which I think will be demonstrated in a story that I'm going to share later on. And this is that there is always the option of forgiveness. So, for example, if someone kills, God forbid, a family member of ours, under an Islamic system, we have the right to take, justice on that, to take, have justice implemented with them losing their life as well. But we also have the choice, and this is better, as mentioned in the Quran, to forgive them. And this is something that is often emphasized, and this is where we have the freedom of choice. But the point is that if we have this punishment there as a deterrent, we will see our society radically improve very, very quickly. And it's only very recently that the death penalty was abolished in the UK, and because of various reasons. There's various reasons for that, which I'm not going to get into. But so deterrence is one reason, which we've covered, and the other reason is justice. So how can someone be recompensed for losing a family member if the person who's committed the crime goes to prison and then is let out a few years later, right? The person who is affected should have the choice on the matter. Someone who's lost their spouse, someone who's lost their child, they should have the choice on the matter. And the Sharia gives a very is very clear on this. But as I mentioned before, the goal ultimately, and I promise I'll sort of move on because I don't want to spend too long on this topic, but I wanted to kind of touch upon it because it's so relevant. The goal isn't to punish in Sharia, it's to deter, to forgive, and ultimately to create a society which is safe for everyone. As a criminal knows there will be consequences. And of course, the reason why I mention this here is because this is a thing that often comes up in dawah conversations when we speak to non-Muslims, but even with our kids and family, right? So our kids grow up in this society and they're very aware of everything that's said about their faith. And we need to be able to educate them in a manner that they feel confident to articulate their faith. And this is what I did a lot with the lad circle that I was running on the weekends, which is I wanted to make them confident in and of themselves when they start working, when they go to university, out and about in the world, that they're able to articulate their faith and just confidently say that I'm a Muslim and this is what I believe in, and I know this to be a better way of living than anything else. And secondly, the other point that I wanted to kind of touch upon is that, in fact, I think this is the next slide, which is this whole topic is a big part of dawah, which I've covered. But the one example that I wanted to mention is that it's a link that we often don't make, but with everything that's going on in Palestine, we often forget that there have been events in our Islamic history where literally millions of Muslims have been massacred, and one famous example is of the Mongols. The Mongols were a destructive force, the likes of which the Muslims had never experienced at that point. Estimates say that they literally killed and massacred millions of Muslims, and then tens of millions of just other people in general. And it was one of the worst catastrophes to happen to the Muslims in those times. And they ransacked, libraries. The very famous example of they burnt entire libraries of Baghdad, and so much literature was lost. So how does dawah link to all of this? What was the thing that actually changed the tide for the Muslims at that time? Because the Mongols were this unstoppable force. The thing that changed was a sheikh. He gave da'wah to the grandson of Genghis Khan, who was obviously the famous Mongol conqueror. The grandson of Genghis Khan, who was Berke Khan, a sheikh who was traveling at that time happened to encounter him. And instead of just dismissing him and saying, "Oh, this, whatever, there's no chance," he decided to give him da'wah. And believe it or not, Berke Khan actually ended up converting. The same man who was responsible for the deaths of so many actually converted to Islam. And this was, as many historians mention, a turning point for the Muslims at that time, because he then effectively turned against his own forces of the Mongols, and his Golden Horde, the army that he led was called the Golden Horde, went and ransacked the Mongol forces, and was something that actually managed to help the Muslims defeat the Mongols themselves. So to give like a very practical example, like it's almost like a Berke Khan becoming Muslim is almost like the someone very senior in the Israeli leadership converting to Islam. Is kind of like something as unexpected as that happening. But it's the fact that this sheikh at that time had a vision, and he had the belief that actually Islam is for everyone, and we should never write someone off, and we should never say that someone isn't open to conversion. And this is where the topic of Sharia comes in, because when we're having these conversations, we should never write someone off or just assume that they're backwards. And we should approach it from a place of love. And so I wanted to kind of mention this example because it's very relevant, and a lot of people don't realize how the actual Mongol defeat began. Fascinating historic example. But anyway, we move on, and I realize we haven't. We're kind of going on to time, and we don't have that much time left. So very quickly, what is Sharia law? What is the purpose of it, and what are some of the benefits and real life practical applications? As I mentioned at the beginning. So very simply, Sharia means the correct path in Arabic, or the well-trodden path to water. Right? Very simple. It refers to the divine counsel that Muslims follow to live moral lives and grow close to God, derived from two sources, the Quran and the Sunnah. The emphasis being in the Sharia that we're supposed to live moral lives, but also that we need to grow close to God. So it's not just about doing the actions without the faith, and it's not just about having faith without doing the actions. We need to do both, and Sharia gives us the mind map, or the it facilitates us, it gives us a system to do that. It's very basic, very simple, nothing too hard. And what is the purpose of it? So generally, scholars mention there are 5 maqasid of Sharia, or goals of Sharia, what Sharia is trying to get from society, and what it's aiming to do. We actually covered one of the 5 yesterday, which was preserving and protecting wealth. And this diagram that we see on the bottom half of the screen is basically summarizes what the 5 goals of Sharia are. And essentially, it's there as a maslaha, or as a social benefit, which is the first box at the top. What Sharia is basically there to say that what will get the most social benefit. And scholars have essentially divided this into 5 categories. Starting from the right, we go to the left, because the right is the most important, and it's ranked in order of importance. So the most important is protecting deen, So, Sharia is there to make sure that people retain their faith in God. They don't fall out of Islam through any practices or any shirk that they take part in. The second thing that's the most that the goal of Sharia is the preservation of life, and we've basically touched upon this earlier on when we looked at the benefits of having capital punishment, the benefits of having a proper system of rule of law that allows criminals to be held accountable for their actions. And so this is protection of life, punishments, and this is of course what Islamophobes tend to focus on, or people who are anti-Islam, which is why I dedicated more time to this. The third category is preservation of aql, so keeping our intellect intact. So how to stop the prevalence of drugs and alcohol. Sharia very much wants to avoid a scenario where people are alcoholics or are not in the right state of mind, because then they're not actually active and functioning members of society. If they can't help themselves, how possibly can they help anyone else, let alone their family? The fourth category is an-nasl. So Sharia is very much focused and driven to preserve the family unit, preserve the lineage. We have all sorts of laws around cheating, preventing extramarital relations, protecting the family unit at all costs, basically. And we see that most issues in society come from that. It literally comes from the family unit being broken. Most criminals, if you look at their backstory, is because, single mother household, single father household, issues growing up, the family unit was harmed in some way, shape, or form. And the Sharia very much is obsessed with keeping this family unit intact. And then finally, which was something we covered yesterday, the preservation of wealth to allow future generations of Muslims to flourish. So again, very simple. In the previous slide, we covered what Sharia is in a nutshell, and then we know what the goals of Sharia are. So these are the 5 goals of Sharia. And then if we move on to the next slide, and I promise this will be the final diagram. Essentially, all Sharia is it facilitates what we see in this diagram. Everyone wants to get to Jannah, and the two categories of actions that they will do to attain that is either to worship Allah, the rights of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, your prayer, your fasting, your zakat, or hukuk al-ibad, so the rights of the people, being good to people, helping humanity, helping people around you. Sharia basically facilitates this. Those 5 things that we looked at in the previous slide facilitate these 2 things to happen. They facilitate you worshipping Allah in the best manner, and also they facilitate us giving the rights of others in the best way. And ultimately, if we look at this diagram, if we focus in on this diagram, we realize that there are categories that people really lack on, right? So huququllah, which is your prayers, your fasting in Ramadan, you're giving charity. People often focus very much on that, and it's impossible to do just one of the 2 and get to Jannah. It is impossible for someone to fast and do all of the rights that Allah has, to do all of that, but then ignore the rights of the people around them. That person will not make it to paradise. If someone is just isolating themselves in the masjid in a cave, just praying day and night, not doing anything wrong, but not actually giving any benefit to society, they're not actually fulfilling the purpose of what they were sent to do in this world. Similarly, if someone doesn't have the belief system, but they're just fulfilling the huquq al-ibad on the left-hand side, and they're all about charity and they're helping people and they're going out and trying to do what they can, but they don't believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they're not fulfilling any of the rights of Allah. Ultimately, they're helping other people for themselves, for that good feeling they get. Then that alone will not be able to allow them to enter Jannah. And the reason why I wanted to touch upon this is very much in our society. Actually, this is a question that I'll put to you because I realize I've droned on for a bit too long than I wanted. Where do you think, as Muslims, where do you think we focus most of our energy on? Do we focus more of our energy on huququllah and abandon or not focus too much on huquq al-ibad, or do you think it's the other way around, that we very much focused on helping other Muslims and we don't pray at all? It's an interesting question. I'll be interested to hear what you guys think. I have an opinion, but I want to see what you guys think. Do you think that we are very good on the thing on the right, or do you think we're very good on the left? You can't say we're bad at both, but if you had to pick one, which one do you think we're the worst at? or we could improve a lot. Yes, good. So Sister Samara hit the nail, mostly in ibadat. Exactly. And that's kind of what I wanted to get at. Okay, so Sister has said, I think people generally, Allah, I think that's enough. Exactly. Exactly. Insular. Perfect. This is what I wanted to get at. So our focus very much is that we obsess, we have this kind of image, right? Of there's a stereotype of someone who prays their 5 daily salah, has a beard, sister who covers, but then these these same people have like really terrible akhlaq, and they rarely smile, and they're terrible people, like in terms of their character and their manners. You know, they're not very good fathers or mothers, but they are fulfilling all of the rights of Allah, but they're completely failing on this other front. And you guys have all hit the nail on the head where you said that nowadays our focus is mainly on huququllah, and we kind of neglect the other thing. And what I really wanted to hit home today through this kind of discussion is that the focus of Sharia Islam, our religion, is very, very much, on huquq al-ibad. In fact, most of the rulings deal with huquq al-ibad, how to deal with people, the rights of people, the rights of different people upon us, our children, our parents, our spouses, our relatives, our neighbors, non-Muslims. How do we deal with these people? And what are their rights upon us? And of course, I mean, there's a category below, which is, how do we actually carry out huquq al-ibad and carry out huquq Allah? That's very self-explanatory, which is personal ibadah and then helping humanity and serving the ummah in whatever way it is. But kind of what I wanted to, there's a hadith I wanted to share on this, which is, I think it summarizes this in a nutshell. The Prophet ﷺ said that whoever has wronged his brother with regard to his honor or anything else, let him seek his pardon today, before there will be there will be no dinar or dirham, i.e., on the day of resurrection, when if he has any good deeds, some of his hasanat will be taken in proportion to his wrongdoing, and if he has no good deeds, then some of the bad deeds of the one whom he has wronged will be taken and added to his burden. And this is narrated in Sahih al-Bukhari. A very, very scary hadith, right? Because when we commit a sin, when we commit a sin, we repent to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But when we wrong someone else, when we say something cruel to someone, when we pass a comment, when we laugh at someone, when we snicker, anything that we do which has affected someone else, even if we ourselves dismiss it and don't realize, that is a huge, huge issue on the Day of Judgment. If we've affected or wronged someone else, if we've hurt them, if we've made them feel bad, that is between us and them. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala cannot actually, the Prophet ﷺ is saying that, you can't buy them off on the Day of Judgment. The only currency on the Day of Judgment will be good deeds. And this is something that people often overlook, right? Their focus is very much on praying and fasting and giving zakah, and they completely forget that they have to be good people as well. They have to smile a lot. They have to be good to their spouses. They have to be good to their kids. They have to be people that are pleasant to be around. And I think it's something that we do often we do often forget as a community, where the obsession is very much on the outward ritualistic actions, and our children very much see us focusing on that as well. And we don't necessarily push our children towards being a good person as opposed to doing good actions. So the question is, have you prayed today? Did you pray your Quran today? As opposed to, how was your prayer today? How did you feel in your prayer today? How did you feel when you read the Quran today? Did you connect to the Quran today? What are some of the lessons that you got from your Quran today? Those are the real questions that we should be asking. And I mean, I have a few more slides, but in the interest of time, this is one of my favorite stories that I wanted to share. And many scholars say that this story represents the epitome or the pinnacle of what Sharia is and what it's supposed to attain. And it's an amazing story, and it's a very famous story, which people might have already heard of, but it's worth reminding ourselves of it. And this is the story of the time of the Khilafah of Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu ta'ala an, and the famous incident that occurred between him, Hadrat Abu Dhar al-Ghifari, and the courtroom. So the story goes as follows. Umar ibn al-Khattab was in the courtroom, and two young men, they come in and they're dragging a young child with them, a young boy. And Umar ibn al-Khattab asks, what's going on? And they say that we want qisas, we want retribution. This young child has killed our father. And the Umar al-Khattab turns to the young boy and he asks him, what happened? Why did you kill their father? Is this true? And the boy responded, this is true, but it was an accident. There was a disagreement with the father with regards to the camel. So this boy had a camel which would often go into neighboring land that belonged to these two young men and their father. And there was a disagreement, and they would get annoyed. And so one day, what the father did is he threw a stone at the camel, and it hit the camel in the eye. And the camel was, the boy could see that his camel was visibly distressed and in pain. And so he threw a rock in anger at the father, which hit him in the head, and the father died, right? Even though that wasn't the intention of the young boy. So obviously these two young men, who are the sons of this father, they were furious, and they dragged him to the courtroom. And Umar ibn Khattab said, look, can you, as I mentioned before, there is an option of forgiveness. So he asked the brothers, can you forgive this child? And said, no, we want retribution. And so Umar ibn Khattab then turned to the child and said, look, this is this is going to happen. You have unlawfully killed someone. He was a fairly young man, this boy. So he said, this young boy, he said to Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu ta'ala an, which is, he said that I have some wealth, and I have a young brother, and he was an orphan. So he said, I have a younger brother, and I want to be able to get this wealth from my younger brother, so that he's looked after if I die. And he said, but I need 3 days. I need 3 days to go and find this wealth, because it's in a distant location, and it's hidden somewhere. So Umar bin Khattab was said to him, that's fine, I can give you those 3 days, but then you need a guarantor to intercede for you if you don't return in those 3 days. And what does it mean to be a guarantor? The person who is going to intercede for him, if he doesn't return, that person will get the punishment instead. So whoever says that I'm going to guarantee this boy coming back, if the boy doesn't come back, that guarantor will get capital punishment. So Umar Khattab looked around and he said, who will be the guarantor for this boy? And no one's putting their hand up, because it's like, no one believes that this boy is going to return. Like, he's probably going to do a runner, he's not going to come back, and there's no point in just risking your life. So Umar Khattab is asking, and then one hand goes up at the back of the courtroom, and it's the hand of the illustrious Sahabi Abu Dhar al-Ghifari radiallahu ta'ala an, who was the famous Sahaba, who went and converted his tribe to Islam, who were the highway robbers. And Umar Khattab, when he sees it's Abu Dhar who's raised his hand, he says to him, like, are you sure that you want to be the guarantor for this boy? Because it's unlikely that he's going to return. And Abu Dhar Ghifari said, no, I'm going to be the guarantor. And so this boy goes off, and one day passes, he doesn't come back. The second day passes, he doesn't come back. The third day passes, and you can imagine the scenes now. Like, it's in Medina. Everyone now has heard of this story. Everyone knows that potentially this great Sahabi Abu Dhar Ghifari could actually face this punishment. And it's literally coming to Maghrib time, and you can see the courtrooms now filling up, and the anticipation is building. And it's a very tense situation. And literally minutes before the adhan of Maghrib is called, the boy rushes into the courtroom, and the brothers at this point, they'd taken Abu Dhar to the courtroom, because they said, look, he hasn't come yet, it's time for you to go. And he said, look, the adhan of Maghrib hasn't happened, let's wait till Maghrib, and that's when the third day will officially be over. And so literally minutes before the Maghrib adhan goes, this boy comes rushing in to the courtroom, and everyone's shocked to see him. No one was expecting him to come back. And Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu ta'ala asks him, oh boy, I sent you. I didn't send any spies behind you. You could have run away. Why didn't you run away? And so he said, the boy gave a very famous response. He said that I didn't want anyone to say that a Muslim gave his word, and he never, and then he didn't keep his word afterwards. I didn't want anyone after us to say that had happened. And then Umar al-Khattab turned to Abu Dhar al-Ghifari radiallahu ta'ala, and he asked him, why did you become the guarantor of this boy when you knew that potentially you were risking your life? And Abu Dhar gave his famous response, and he said that I never wanted someone to say that a Muslim was in need and no one was there to help that Muslim in need. And then the two brothers who saw this, they said that how can we hear this and we say that a Muslim, we don't want anyone to say that there was a Muslim who asked for forgiveness and there was no one there to forgive him. And so they forgave that boy, and they said, look, we don't want the punishment to go ahead. And subhanAllah, amazing story. And this is why the scholars mention that it's the epitome of what Sharia is supposed to be, where you had someone who got killed, but then you had a sense of justice that prevailed. Then you had a sense of honor, and people whom inside they were changed so much internally that it was the best outcome that you could have imagined, but with no one feeling that they'd been wronged, all coming from a very genuine place. And I guess this is a great story kind of to take with us from this discussion, because it really does, for me, epitomize what a truly Islamic system would look like, where there is a sense of justice, but then there is a sense of forgiveness, and where we, where we inspire each other. So amazing story, and I think we are quickly running out of time. If the organizers can just message and let me know if I've run out of time, and I will stop. But there's a few hadith that I wanted to share before I close. And again, this is on the theme of da'wah, but also on the theme of how Sharia is supposed to change us from the inside, as opposed to become people who are just doing our daily ibadat. Okay, jazakallah khair. So this is a very famous hadith. The Prophet ﷺ said, the most beloved people to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are those who are most beneficial to people. The most beloved deed to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is to make a Muslim happy, or to remove one of his troubles, or forgive his debt, or feed his hunger. That I walk with a brother regarding a need is more beloved to me. This is the Prophet ﷺ saying this. That I walk with a brother regarding a need is more beloved to me than I seclude myself in this mosque in Medina for a month. Whoever walks with his brother regarding a need until he secures it for him, then Allah Almighty will make his footing firm across the bridge on the day when the footings are shaken. Subhanallah, amazing. And this is a class as Sahih by Shaykh Albani. Amazing hadith. In this there is no mention of ritual ibadah. There's literally mention of helping someone in need. And it's kind of very contextual for us in Ramadan. Often we associate Ramadan with isolating ourselves and doing ibadah, which of course is very important and it's supposed to be for this month. But often what people don't associate with Ramadan is going out and helping people or helping their family more so than any other month. And this hadith perfectly illustrates that. Subhanallah. Something that, food for thought. I think this is the final slide. There might be one slide more after this, but two other hadith, again, that we can take away from this discussion, which is the most perfect believer is the one with the best character in Sahih Tirmidhi. So the best believer, the best person, the best Muslim is the one with the best character, not with the best prayer, not with the most charity, not with anything else. It's the person who has the best character. And then the hadith on the right says that the nearest of you to me on the day of judgment will be the one who is the best in character. So the nearest to the Prophet ﷺ on the day of judgment is the person who is best in their character. And this is extremely powerful because the scholars mention that and I'll close on this, which is the people in the highest level of Jannah will all have one thing in common, and that is their good character. There is no one who will attain the highest level of Jannah with bad character. They may be different on other things. So someone might have better salah, someone might have more charity, someone might have fasted more, someone might have done, some other ibadah a lot better, but they will all have impeccable, amazing character. And the opposite is not true. So there is no one who could have done their fasting on salah and the ritual ibadah really well, but they were terrible people and they had a terrible character. They cannot make it to the highest levels of Jannah. It just doesn't work like that, which shows us the importance of good character above everything. This is what Islam came to change within us. It came to change us from the inside, to change our character, as opposed to make us follow a bunch of rules and rituals. If we are praying our salah and doing our daily ibadat, but it's not changing us from the inside, then there is something that we're missing. And very practically, what we should ask ourselves at the end of every day is, how was I today with my spouse? How was I today with my kids? How was I today with my friends? Well, how was I when I was angry? What do I do when I'm angry? Do I care about the comfort of other people in my day-to-day life? Basic things like after using a public bathroom, do I leave it in a state that I would have wanted myself to have found it in? These are the things that actually make someone go from an average Muslim to the best Muslim. And there's the hadith on the screen, the two hadith on the screen emphasize that. And these are the hadith that we often don't hear of because we're very focused on our ibadat, which of course are important, and I don't want to undermine this. But good character is fundamental, and we won't move forward as a community and as an ummah if we don't improve on our character and we don't improve on the way we are with each other. People should feel that this person is a Muslim when they speak to them. They should feel that you're a Muslim from your character. And this is why Islam spread so quickly early on through the character of the Prophet ﷺ. People love to be around him. People love to see him. People love to sit with him. He wasn't there telling people off for not praying properly or for praying in the wrong manner, for not fasting on time or for drinking. Yes, there was Sahaba at his time who would drink, who would do all sorts of stuff. But he was so pleasant and approachable to be around that they loved to be around him. He never made them feel bad for who they were or their shortcomings. And this was why Islam flourished, and kind of what we need to do as a community now. And actually, this is the final hadith. I promise this is the final slide. No, actually, I have one more slide after this, but that's just a summary. And this is this hadith I love. It's in Al-Bukhari. Allah has divided manners between you, just as He has divided your provision, meaning your wealth. Verily, Allah gives wealth to whom He loves and whom He does not love, but He does not bestow iman except upon whom He loves. So whoever feels miserly about giving his wealth in charity, or he fears fighting enemy in battle, or he is reluctant to wake up and pray the night salah, then he should at least say these adhkar, La ilaha illallah, subhanallah, alhamdulillah, wallahu akbar. The point I wanted to take from this is that Allah gives wealth to everyone. He gives wealth to whom He loves, and He gives wealth to those He doesn't love. He gave wealth to Fir'aun. He gave wealth to other people who are criminals. But He does not give akhlaq, manners, to everyone. He only gives it to those whom He loves. And the best of people are those who have the best of character, which is emphasized in this hadith. So the point I'm trying to make is that we should, more so than the pursuit of wealth, we should pursue good character. We should pursue being good around other people. We should obsess over how we make other people feel. If we're not obsessed on that, then we're missing a trick. If we don't constantly reflect on, did I make my spouse feel bad today? Did I make my child feel bad today? Did I make my neighbor feel bad today? Then we're doing the wrong thing. In fact, I'll end on this hadith, which is, there was a man who was promised paradise, and I'm not going to give the whole story, but very simply, the reason why he was promised paradise, he was a man of Jannah, was because at the end of every night, he would forgive everyone who had wronged him. And that was the only reason that the Prophet ﷺ said that he's a man of Jannah, which is that every night he would forgive anyone who had wronged him in the day, and he didn't do anything else. Basic ibadah, he read a bit of Quran here and there. All he did was that his heart was clean, and he didn't have any grudges towards anyone. So this is the final slide. The three kind of takeaways that I want all of us to take is, firstly, we should have a basic understanding of what Sharia is. A very basic understanding. We know that it's not just about rules and rituals, but it's very much about changing what's inside of us. And if we had to speak to someone about it, this is the point that we want to deliver to them, that it's very much about changing what's inside. The second thing is that feeling of confidence when we discuss Sharia. We should be confident that we know that it's good for society, and we've kind of discussed a few reasons why. And then the thirdly is that there's some benefits that we can easily articulate to anyone, which is better social cohesion, stronger family unit, better human relations, and better character inside of us, inshallah ta'ala. So those are the three key takeaways I would say, apart from all of the other hadith that I mentioned. I know that it wasn't as interactive near the end, so I do apologize for that. Hopefully I didn't bore anyone for droning on for too long. But I pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allows us the tawfiq to become better in our character and our conduct, and allow us to attain Jannah in the manner most pleasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So I'll end it there, and I'll hand it over back to the organizing sisters, inshallah. Jazakallah khair.
Barakallah feek. Mashallah, that was a brilliant session, mashallah. It was very insightful and indeed a truly thought-provoking contribution. I mean, and mostly what I come across is obviously we're just doing the rituals and we're not really contemplating the thought process that goes behind it. So, alhamdulillah, very, very, very thought-provoking contribution today. And I'm sure all of you sisters sitting here have benefited immensely from today's talk, all the hadith, and the points covered, subhanAllah. So we can draw plenty of lessons from today's session and make these sessions, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make these sessions extremely beneficial for all of you sisters. Ameen ya Rabbal Alameen. Before proceeding, I'll take a moment to check the chat box for any questions, if there are any.
Yeah, sorry, I forgot to mention, if anyone has any reflections they wanted to share, then please feel free to mention anything that you wanted to. But alhamdulillah, some really nice comments coming through. Jazakallah khair.
Yeah, I'm sure they all enjoyed thoroughly as much as I did. And sisters, please feel free to put any type of questions that you would want to be answered from today's session. Does Sharia require that? Okay, there is a question for you, brother. Does Sharia require the apostates be killed? How to inculcate good character in kids?
Okay, Jazakallah khair. So I'll take the first question. Does Sharia require that apostates be killed? So I think the first thing that we need to clarify is that there are very strict guidelines to capital punishment, to imposing a capital punishment upon someone, and this is something that's often mentioned by people who potentially on TV shows, or people who are wanting to paint Sharia in a certain way. The first thing to mention is that, as I mentioned, very, very strict criteria for imposing capital punishment. So, for example, if someone really wanted to apostate and they just, they felt that they were losing their iman, they don't have to necessarily be punished for that if they do it in a private manner. And this is with the rulings across all of the Sharia. So the ruling for adultery, the ruling for homosexuality, anything that someone does in private, because the criteria are so high to actually impose a capital punishment. Some people might be aware that there needs to be 4 witnesses to the act being committed, right? So really and truly, if anyone wants to get away with something in a society that's governed by Sharia, they absolutely can. And not that I'm promoting it, but if someone wants to have extramarital relations, or if someone wants to do something that's wrong, that's wrong, but they've kept it private and to themselves, for example, if they're drinking or something, then you can't actually punish them for that. It's only if it's proven without a reasonable shadow of a doubt and they're very public with it, and then they're encouraging other people to do it, is when that punishment becomes mandatory. And this is very much something that we see in Islamic history, that Islamic societies very much weren't places where people were getting punished left, right, and center. I mean, there were literally handfuls of cases that you could count from the whole of, for the majority of Islamic history, where people were given capital punishment. The focus very much was on, reformation, forgiveness, and just having it there as a deterrent for some very clear examples. So that hopefully that sort of answers that question. But yes, there is capital punishment, and if someone has apostated publicly and is pushing people away from Islam, and there's a set of criteria that they'll have to fulfill, that the majority of people wouldn't fulfill, as I just mentioned. So yeah, hopefully that answers the question. But if there's a few more that have come in. How to inculcate good character in kids? Any practical tips? So that's a very good question. personally, my experience is that, I mean, I'm from like an Asian background, Desi background, and I think with a sort of South Asian background, parents don't often have proper conversations with their children from a very young age. So it's very much about getting them to do certain things, um, getting them to do certain rituals, but not actually having proper deep discussion, like meaningful discussions with their kids. And this is what I think can actually inculcate or start inculcating good character, where you have an environment where the child can come to you and is comfortable coming to you and discussing something. A famous example is the story of Yusuf alayhi salam, which a lot of people overlook. Is at the start of the story where he mentions the dream to his father. It's the fact that he felt comfortable coming to his father to actually mention that dream. Often with young boys, they go to their mothers, and scholars mention that he felt comfortable. He had a good enough relation with his father that he himself just came to his father and told him about this random dream. And his father, instead of like, you know, saying that, you know, you're wrong or whatever, he actually gave him that acknowledgement for coming and communicating that with him. So long story short, inculcating good character in kids, I think very much starts with ourselves and how we are with the kids and how our kids see us interacting with our spouses. The kids learn from what we do more than what we say. So if we are acting in a certain manner, and it's very much learned behavior. So we often see ourselves, our own behavior reflected in our kids, and then we realize that we don't like it. And so, yeah, so I would say that. Second thing to caveat is, you know, sometimes, you know, we do have difficult experiences as parents. Sometimes kids can be difficult. And we know we have examples in the Quran which give many examples of how Anbiya had spouses or children that didn't listen to them. So the second thing is to not kind of beat ourselves up if something is going wrong or if our child is acting out. We should do what we can, have that interaction, have that open conversation, but then we shouldn't, you know, sort of beat up ourselves over if we see our child going out of line. So I think, yeah, that would be a practical tip. One thing I should add as well is having dinner together is also a good thing. So in Ramadan, we often have iftar together, and that very much inculcates a family environment where, you know, the father and the mother are there with the child, or even if it's you know, if it's a single mother or single father household, there is the interaction happening, and the parents are very much engaged and involved with the kids, and they know exactly what's up with them, as opposed to sort of, you know, living in denial or not being aware of what's going on. So yeah, hopefully that answers that question. There's another one. Is Sharia anti-feminist? Okay, we've got juicy questions coming in today. So the way that I look at this is, of course, we have this whole huge issue of feminism these days, and lots of discussions around that, and how does it interact with Islam. I think the way that we should look at it as Muslims is that Islam gives us the perfect way of life to live. It gives us the perfect way of interacting between genders, gives us the perfect way to live as a man, as a woman, and it gives everyone their own rights and privileges that come with that. And so once we start utilizing other ideologies to inform what we should or should not follow, that's when problems come. And the reason why a lot of people, or a lot of young, in my experience at least, a lot of young Muslim women turn towards feminism is because they've had bad experiences, not necessarily to do with the Islamic faith, but to do with their cultural tradition. And they've kind of misconceived that to be as part of their faith. And in Islam, it's very simple that men and women are equal in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we don't look for our value in the eyes of what a man does. You know, the key. I won't spend too long on this because obviously I know that we've come near the end. But one of the key flaws of feminism is that it makes the man the standard, and Islam doesn't make the man the standard. Islam makes Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala the one who legislates what the standards are for both men and women, and He is the one who sets the standards. So everything that we do is not to please a man or a woman, it's to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And what we do isn't to please ourselves, it's to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So feminism is very much about equality, like a man and woman should be equal, and everything should be the same. But as Muslims, we don't view the world in the same way. Um, Men and women are equal in access to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So nowhere in our Islamic tradition does it say that a woman or a man gets more reward for doing an action. Everyone gets equal reward, and there's different rights and legislations for men and women. And in fact, women have a higher rank in many things in Islam, such as, famous hadith of paradise lying under the women's feet. So yeah, there's we can go on and on about this topic, but it's kind of, I think, suffice it to say that the Sharia is very much it's not anti anything. It's just it's a separate system altogether. It doesn't require any other system. And if we have other systems that agree with Sharia, then yeah, we can take that. But anything that goes against Islam, we should discard it. Okay, I think we've got one more question that's come up. My brother often challenges me and asks, "Has Islam abolished slavery? How should I respond?" Okay, we've got a variety of questions coming in. Slavery. Okay, so it's an interesting question. The way to talk about it is, we had slavery that was abolished in the West, in America, in the late 19th century. You can see how well that's going, right? You still have incredible racism in America, race riots, white nationalists, KKK. Ultimately, nothing changed, right? Is the goal to abolish something, to make it illegal, or is the goal to change people for them to actually abolish it themselves? Is the goal to ban alcohol, or is the goal to change people for them to be ready to stop drinking? Alcohol was banned in the 1920s. That didn't work in the US. The prohibition came in. It didn't work because people didn't change inside. So we have an example of alcohol getting banned, slavery getting abolished, which sounds great, but in practice it did not work. Contrast it to the time of the Prophet ﷺ. He was able to effectively banish alcoholism the way that slaves were treated. Because the thing that is often, I think, should clarify, is that the way that we think of slavery in our modern day is we think of, like, American films about slavery, which is, how they were treated. And yeah, good point from sister there. We'll make this the last question because I know that we'll go over time. But the way that we sorry, sister, you're going to say something? Or
Yeah, no, that's fine. You can conclude and then I'll take it from there, inshallah.
All right, Jazakallah khair. Yeah, so I'll keep this quick, inshallah. But the way that we think about slavery in the modern days, we think about, sort of African slaves that went to the US and worked there on the cotton farms, which very much isn't the case as how Islam mentions slavery. And in fact, the Prophet ﷺ, he came to protect people from the systems and societies that they were in. So to give a sort of simple example, slaves, the Prophet ﷺ, at the Prophet ﷺ's time, the slaves were often treated better. Islam gives a better treatment of slaves than employees in companies today, right? And I don't want to go into, because we don't have time to go into this in too much depth, but the idea behind abolishing something. So if the Prophet ﷺ was to come and he abolished slavery immediately and he abolished alcohol immediately, Hazrat Aisha radiallahu ta'ala has said that if that had happened, then we would not have listened and it would not have worked. So the Prophet ﷺ, for many of the first years of Islam, was very much about changing people from within to allow them to get rid of these structures themselves. So the example of alcohol is a very good one. The first ruling that came down, alcohol was abolished in 3 stages, right? The first was a very light verse in the Quran that says, the harms are more than its benefits. There are some benefits, but the harms are more, and that was it. You can still carry on drinking. You can still carry on, drinking alcohol. It's fine. People would come with alcohol to the masjids, no problem. Then the second verse that came down was, don't pray, don't drink. You can drink, but just don't drink while you're praying, right? So that was the second stage, and so people would carry on drinking, but they just would stop when they would be coming to the masjid. And then finally, the third stage was, stop drinking altogether. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu ijtanibu. There's another verse, I forget which one it is, but essentially, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put a hard stop on drinking. And when that third verse came down, people were internally ready to stop drinking alcohol. And then they said that the streets of Medina flowed with alcohol. And so this is the same. This, I guess, answers your question, which is how Islam actually abolished things. was very much by changing people from within to allow them to accept the rulings, as opposed to how the West tried to do it, which is they just placed a hard ban on alcohol, they placed a hard ban on slavery, and we still have problems with Black Lives Matter, like almost 150 years later. So it just doesn't work. You have to change people from within. You can't impose a ruling on someone and expect that to work. So yeah, I will say that, and if you want, I guess you could mention to your brother that legislation sounds good. It sounds good to say that I've abolished slavery, but in practice, it doesn't work. If you look at what's happened, it's very much the focus that you should focus on changing people from within. So yeah, I think I've waffled on for a bit longer than I intended to. So apologies for that. Inshallah, this was beneficial, and I'll hand it back over to the organizing sisters. Jazakallah khair.
Barakallah feek, mashallah. Very good, interesting questions coming through, and very interesting answers as well. And I'm hoping that this has benefited all the sisters and answered lots of the audience's question. Moving forward, today the UK Islamic Missions Appeal highlights New Muslim Care, particularly the Sisters section, a cause that holds significance in my life. I kindly request the IT team to display today's video presentation. Jazakallah khair.
Assalamu alaikum. My name's Nusrat. I'm a revert sister. I reverted to Islam just over 30 years ago. I married a Muslim guy we were together for nearly 28 years. And about 3 years ago, he threw me out of my house. I lost my house, my children, because he kept the children, won't let me see my children. My oldest son, he's also a Muslim revert. And due to everything I've been through, my brothers and my sisters were not happy with the fact that I'm a Muslim revert. My mum and dad was okay with it. My mum passed away in 2021. And then after that, my family, my brothers and sisters caused issues. They wouldn't let me see my dad. And then my dad passed away, and I had more struggles with my family due to the fact of being a Muslim revert. I lost my inheritance due to that reason financially. Also, I've been in touch with Sharia law to do my talaq from my husband, and because I can't afford it, and I didn't get no support from there. Actually, I've got no support from anybody. Being a Muslim revert is hard enough to just get on to daily life, but when people don't support you, his family never supported me, even though I did everything for them. I didn't want nothing in return, just for them to help me and support me when I had these issues with their son or brother. So now I've lost my way. Mars, Rose, I can't do it. I'm just lost due to the fact that I've had no support from anybody whatsoever. So I do hope this helps you, or if anything, you can contact me. Thank you, bye.
Jazakallah khair. So, sisters, yesterday we came across a clip where we listened to a revert sister's journey and facing her hardships. And today we have another revert sister, and she's facing a different type of challenge. So, these are merely just 2 sisters, and it's just the tip of the iceberg that New Muslim Care knows about. However, I'm raising awareness about the struggles of the revert's journey and the increasing number of sisters joining Islam daily. This means that there's a huge need within our society to help these revert sisters. Both zakat and sadaqah apply. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, help you guys to help these people in bringing, their overcoming their hurdles, their hardships, and their huge problems that they go through day in and day out. And because sadaqah does apply, so I'm sure there are no excuses, inshallah. Any sadaqah, any zakat, anything in the way of Allah, please feel free to donate. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept our efforts and bring ease to everyone around us. Ameen Ya Rabbal Alameen. My dear audience, please take note of the bank details and consider contributing during these blessed nights. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will reward you abundantly for your generous contribution, inshallah. The IT team has put forward the appeal page, and underneath the appeal page, you will see that there are bank account details. If the IT team could please type into the chat box about the bank account details, because it's a little bit unclear. Please remember to connect with us on our social media platforms, inshallah. We maintain several pages, and we kindly ask you to like and subscribe to stay informed about our ongoing programs throughout the year. Jazakallah khair, dear speaker, for your enlightening words and for guiding us throughout today's session. A heartfelt thank you to all attendees for dedicating your time and actively participating. Your contributions has truly enriched our gathering. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward each and every one of you abundantly for your commitment and effort in seeking knowledge. Let us also extend our gratitude to UK Islamic Mission volunteers who work tirelessly behind the scenes, and to the platform that enables us to come together for such meaningful events. We have these national programs running throughout Ramadan, Monday to Friday. Tomorrow being the last day, inshallah. I hope and pray that all of you will be here, same time, same place tomorrow, inshallah. So we go towards our du'as. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ربنا أفرغ علينا صبرا وتوفنا مسلمين. Our Lord, pour upon us patience and let us die as Muslims in submission to you. Chapter 7, verse 126. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعليه وسلم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.